right, guys, welcome to season 2 again, right? This is episode 2 of season 2. We are live, and today we are glad to have amongst us Dr. Lyda Williams. This lady has been very instrumental in my development as a student, and a successful one, of course. So I'm very delighted to have her on the podcast today. I know that today's conversation is going to be very beneficial to a lot of you out there. We'll be talking about effective time management and all that jazz, right? So grab your coffee or popcorn or whatever, popsicles, and get ready as we start. Lydia, good morning.
Before, thanks for the nice and warm welcome.
Oh, man. It's a pleasure. It's my pleasure. Thank you for making time to join us. So can you please tell us a little bit about yourself, Lydia?
All right. So I always never know where to start. So first of all, I am I was originally born in Jamaica. So I came to the States as a teenager in my late teens. And I actually could not go to college immediately. We couldn't afford it. So I worked full time as a nanny for several years. And then in my early 20s, I started going to school at Lehman. And I worked full time and attended college full time, which was very hard to do, which meant that I took night classes, weekend classes. And the great thing about Lehman is all these options are available.
Yeah.
And actually, Dr. Jack Henning, was actually my first bio instructor, and he taught Saturday classes, which was really great. But you were pretty much there from 9 to 4 every single Saturday. So by the time I was in my second year, I got into what is called a MARC program. So it's Minority Access to Research Careers. So I was able to receive a stipend. So I no longer had to work off campus. I worked as a tutor and all of that stuff. I'm from the Caribbean, I have to work like a million jobs. And then, so as I was a student at Lehman, I kind of knew I wanted, as a MARC student, I was able to get research experience. So I kind of wanted to go to the research path, but I didn't do enough research. So I applied to the NIH. They have a program called the Post-Bac ERTA. And I did a year and a half at the NIH doing research at the NIDDK. And then I applied to a PhD, came back to the Bronx at Einstein, and 6 years later, I graduated with a PhD in biochem, came back to Lehman. I really wanted to give back to Lehman because it was so instrumental in my development. So I came back to Lehman, worked as an advisor and an adjunct instructor. And that's like the short story.
The short story, right.
Yes.
So let's just drive straight into it. Well, first though, before we do that, I want to know, who was Lydia back in high school? I asked everyone this question, so let's start with that.
Oh my gosh. So in high school, just way back. So I went to high school in Jamaica. My high school was an all-girls high school, and I lived very far away from the high school, so I actually was boarding. So I boarded with maybe 100 other girls. And I actually, we had study hall. We had to we didn't get to go anywhere. We were pretty much school and then boarding school, So it really was, I don't know who I was in high school. I was just pretty much studying all the time or reading or something like that. But I do want to say that I did appreciate that I didn't go right from high school to college, because I felt like I developed a lot and learned a lot about myself during that time. And that caused me to, be more dedicated to work. But yeah, I was pretty boring in high school.
Okay. And then college. Let's talk about college. Yeah. College life.
So college life, I
mean, you did talk a little bit about that, but let's in detail. Yeah.
I worked full time and went to school full time for the first 2 years, which was really tough because I felt like I didn't get to participate in anything. I really didn't, get to be a real college student. But by the time I was in my junior year, I was a part of the student senate. I was a part of Lehman Life. I was tutoring. I was being SI. I was in the biology club. I just started being very involved. And I think that's one of the things that I would encourage students to do is to be involved in the college and in making decisions as a part of the student senate. I was one of the students that were involved in naming the Leonard Leaf Library. So
Really?
yeah,
I
yep,
didn't
that
know
was
that.
okay. That may tell you
Okay.
exactly what date I was in college, but yeah. So
Okay.
so I think
Yeah.
one thing I do like about Lehman is that they listen to the students. So I would tell students, get involved in clubs. I know you think, all right, your goal is to come to college, get an education, but it's so much more, you want to get involved and be a part of what's going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Wow. So you were part of the team that made the library. Okay. That's interesting. Uh okay, that's nice. That's nice. And I know
And
you spent yeah. Yeah.
I forgot to mention, as I
Yeah.
said, I was a part of Lehman Life. So Lehman Life is this club that
Yes.
they go away in this spring break or in the summers and they do volunteer work. I got to go to Costa Rica, which was really, really beautiful,
Ooh.
and give back. And that was really, really nice. So,
Mm.
get involved. There's all of that. There's study abroad. There's so many options available that students are not aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I know you spent a lot of time in the library as well.
I did. So,
Yeah.
it's all coming back to me before. It's all coming back.
Yes. Tell us about it. Time management. So.
So I was a part of the LSP program. And because of that, there is a dedicated space in the library on the third floor where LSP students actually had access to computers and we could study. And I would spend a lot of time in the library studying, mostly chemistry, even though I was a bio major. I spent a lot of time on chemistry. I also learned that sunflower seeds are not a great snack to eat when you're studying. They're very messy. Yeah, but that was my to-go snack. And yeah, yeah. But I did spend a lot of time in the library.
Okay. What seeds were those? Like flax seeds or what?
No, the sunflower seeds, the ones that are still in the shell. Not good to eat. Yeah, when you're studying. But,
Okay. Okay. So let's dive in. Time management. It's a huge thing that people are shy to ask for help about. They feel insecure about it and they kind of want to figure it out on their own. The thing with that is you can figure it out on your own, but it's to save time. It's just gonna, it's gonna take a while to get to know yourself. So it's better to take advice from those who have gone through the process. So I mean, Lydia has a PhD, and she's very invested into research. So she does a lot of things. So today, Lydia, please share with us. I mean, time management. I mean, you can talk. Just roll.
right. Okay, so I by no means am an expert on time management. We all struggle with procrastination, getting stuff done, right? One thing I learned during my PhD, and I really like this method, is on Sundays or Mondays. The first thing that I do is I make a list of all the things I want to accomplish for that week. And then I'm going to break them down. I'm going to prioritize what is important. What is the most important? What do I need to get done immediately? Because, in the beginning of the week, you're going to have more energy. You're going to be more fresh. So you want to tackle your hardest task, your most important task first, right? You also, sometimes a task may seem too large. You might also want to break it down into smaller pieces and kind of decide when you want to get stuff done. Post-it notes are my best friend. I always have post-it notes hanging around, to kind of remind myself of stuff. A planner is my best friend. I organize myself. Every year, my favorite thing to do is shop for a planner. Any ideas on like Christmas gifts, anyone? Yeah, I like planners.
Yeah.
It's a running joke. I usually buy like 3 or 4. I only use one, but anyway, yeah, a planner. I know a
Yeah.
lot of students are, I'm old school, but if you're digital planners
Hey,
work
that's
too,
me.
right?
I'll rather save money and use Google Calendar.
Google Works, right? So there are like lots of apps
Works.
available where you could
Yeah.
import, your deadlines and things like that. And I know like for a lot of our students, like you're in pre-health, you have like exams you have to take, example like the MCAT.
Hmm.
So you have to be realistic about what things, what do you have to do? Like what things you have that are, you have class, right? You may have a job, right? We're in New York. We kind of all have to work, right? And, like different
Yeah.
things. And then the other times that you have, then you could dedicate to, what you need. But you have to be realistic. The other thing you have to be realistic about is, are you a morning person or a night person? What time do you get things done? You have to be very realistic about that. And, you have to clear away distractions. That's the other thing. But then at the end of the other thing that I do is reward myself. Like I break stuff up into like small chunks and then I reward myself at the end of the time. Like if it is to like scroll on my phone or something on social media. Yeah, we old people go on social media too. So yeah. So, if it's like, but the phone is definitely a big distraction, so
Huge.
you should just reward yourself with something like that at the end of it. But
What advice do you have for someone who is addicted to social media and your phone?
hide it. Hide it and don't allow yourself to do it until you've accomplished a task. Because I said, like, it doesn't have to be a big task. Like,
Yeah.
but you have to study. You have to study and you have to get stuff done. So if you're like, all right, I'm going to get through this chapter on cells. As soon as I'm done, then I'm going to allow myself 5 or 10 minutes to scroll on the phone, and then you go back to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like deprive yourself. Don't cut it off totally, but definitely, you have to, be smart about like what you need to do and what,
Right.
because I mean, there are things on, there are websites, there are programs. I mean, you'll go online and you could find stuff online to study. But then what I do find is like when I'm doing stuff online, when I'm researching, I end up in a rabbit hole, right? So I'm going to end up finding tons of stuff. So the best thing to do is to organize all of your materials that you need before you start studying and then do that. But
Right. Right. Thank you. So a big, should I say, blockade to effective time management is procrastination, like you talked about. Can you share some tips to deal with that procrastination?
I would say like have an accountability partner. If you do have like another student who you're friends with who has like similar classes or something like that, you should definitely have that person. You guys could study together, or have that person like call you and be like, hey, you need to check in, or you do the same for the other person too. And that goes to all aspects of your life. Because I remember like for me, like I'm like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, right? Because everybody, like at the beginning of the year, you plan to go to the gym, right? And I kind of like at home, I started doing some workouts, but I wasn't very good at it. I wasn't very good at staying on track. But I started going to the gym with a friend. And then she'd call me and she'd be like, it's raining. We shouldn't go. And I'm like, yeah, we should. But I'm hoping she convinces me not
That
to
you
go.
don't
But
go.
I ended up convincing her to go. So, yeah. So, as I said, like in all aspects of your life, just having another person who, has a similar goal kind of helps you to stay on track, because honestly, you can't base it on feelings, right? You don't always want to do something. It's human nature to procrastinate, right? But you have to know, like, what your ultimate goal is. The other thing you can do is a vision board. right? So if you have a vision board like near where you study with kind of like your goals written out, exactly what you want to get done, then that will help to keep you motivated. Because sometimes the goal seems so far away that it's just like, why bother? But I feel like if you have something like, in front of you, just reminding you this is what your ultimate goal is, then that will help to keep you motivated.
Right. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, if this information is helpful, be sure to like the video. Yeah. Be sure to like the video and also share it with your friends. Liking the video helps us with the YouTube algorithm so that we can share it with more Premeds like you. So please do like the video. Thank you. So Lydia, before we go into research, let's talk about college courses. So you you were a biology major. You took organic chemistry, the likes of molecular bio, whatever you took. Tell us, what classes did you take? And then what were the most difficult classes out of those classes?
All right. So if you told me I was going to mention this, I'd pull up my transcript. Definitely, what classes did I take? So because I was an LSP student, I didn't have to take all of the general education courses that all other students have to take. There were specific LSP seminar classes that I took. Also, when I was a student, Lehman Biology Department did not have a BS. It was a BA. So the requirements were
lucky.
The requirements were slightly different. It was pretty much just complete these number of credits and you were pretty good. So I did general bio, I did genetics, I did microbiology, I did embryology, histology, that was a good one, neurophysiology, and some others that I'm not remembering. The chemistries, organic chem, biochem, physics. Sorry, Dr.
I think
Calvin.
that list is good. Yeah. Wait,
I took physics, not with Dr. Calvin, no, but physics was not my best subject.
Yeah. Physics. Okay, so this is great because out of this list, we pretty much have the MCAT focus courses here. So let's hit organic chemistry first. What do you have for that class? That's a huge one.
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Organic chemistry. What do you have for that class? Yeah.
Okay, so when I was a student, I actually did not have as great a pre-health advisor as Dr. Calvin. So I didn't start chemistry in my first year. So I ended up taking organic chemistry and physics at the same time, which is really rough because exams were very close. So when I took organic chemistry, I found that I needed to spend a lot of time just going over practice questions. That's what I did. I made up my own questions. I read ahead of the instructor. And I just spent a lot of time on doing that. I know for some people models help, just like, picturing them, the different molecules and stuff. But I am more like I'm not that much of a visual person. I like words. So, but I think there was like a modeling like website that we also used when I was a student, if I remember correctly. But definitely like reading ahead of the instructor. I used the Science Learning Center a lot. In fact, a lot of times I'd study in the Science Learning Center when they did have room. And then that way I could, could ask questions if I ran into any issues. But the Science Learning Center was my best friend. The other thing I would say is before you think you don't understand the material, you should get help, right? So start with tutoring, even if you don't think you need help, because you're going to run into problems. I mean, it's new material. It's almost, I always say organic chemistry is like learning a new language, right? Because you have to learn the nomenclature and then you have to learn everything else, right? So just go to tutoring immediately and, and you'll be on track.
Yeah. Okay. Genetics.
So genetics, I did a lot of reading on my own. I had Dr. Zhang for genetics. I read the textbook a lot. I know like Dr. Henning is the one that teaches genetics right now. So I would say like pay attention to his notes, read a lot.
Hmm.
Science
Yep.
Learning Center. If there's SI available, definitely do the SI. But the
Yeah.
one thing I also want to mention about like Dr. Henning and even your instructors in general, office hours. Your instructors' office hours are
Huge.
very, very, very important. I mean, this is where you could bring questions if you have any, or you could just talk to your instructors about your next steps. This way, the instructor will know you. So if you have any, later on when you do need recommendation letters, different things like that, then you can, you've already developed a relationship with this person. They kind of know you. They know, oh, this is a dedicated student. They always came to office hours. They always have questions, this kind of
Yeah.
stuff, right? Because sometimes you're in a class and that class has 60 students, right? So, the instructor doesn't really get to know you as well. So I feel like office hours are great, not only to ask questions, but for the instructor to get to know you.
Right. Right. Thank you. And I believe these tips are very transferable to all the other classes. So guys, take
Absolutely.
note. Yeah. So general chemistry for the freshmen out there listening to us.
Okay, so general chemistry, get ahead. Get ahead
Mm,
of the instructor. Like be one or two chapters ahead. At the end, outside of the problems that are provided in class, work different problem sets on your own. And it's the same thing. The Science Learning Center. I know there are TAs available with the now, so definitely ask your TAs. Definitely go to office hours. It's pretty much the same. Advice for all the sciences pretty much because there's so many resources available. You just
yeah.
have to take advantage of it. The other thing I would say is if you can invest in a whiteboard,
Mm,
invest in a whiteboard, work problems on that whiteboard, or, work in a group with different students to kind of solve a problem.
yeah.
This is where I find that a study group or a study partner helps a lot. And I didn't, understand the advantage of having a study group until grad school so much, but I did have a best friend that I studied a lot with in college. And what I did find is like wherever I had gaps in my knowledge, she understood. And where she had gaps in her knowledge, I understood. So we were able
Mm,
to like really help each other, because it's like you're building on previous knowledge. And if you don't have the previous knowledge, if there are gaps, especially, with COVID and all of that stuff,
yeah.
this is where, it would be really helpful to have a study group.
Yeah.
As long as you're studying and not like joking around and stuff. But
I was about to talk about the negatives of the study group.
yeah, but there's so
And
many
how to deal
positives
with that.
too.
Absolutely. Yeah. A lot of positives for sure. Okay. Physics.
Physics was not my strong point.
Mm,
I honestly, in retrospect, would go back and probably spend more time doing physics problems, spending more time in the Science Learning Center, making sure I understood it. In high school, I didn't fully understand physics. So I don't feel like my foundation for physics was that great. So in college, as I said, I was taking it with organic chemistry. And I kind of chose to study organic chemistry instead of physics, which was a bad approach because I was like, I enjoy organic chemistry. Like, I'm doing well in it. But because I was doing well in it, I should have studied physics more because I was
mm,
doing, better in organic chem. But I made the wrong decision. And,
yeah.
I did pass the class and I did do well, but I feel like, I could have done better. I could have definitely spent more time on it. And this is where time management comes in because I should have like organized myself so I spent more time on physics instead of like so much in organic chemistry. And this is another thing I tell students, like if you're doing great in a class, right, you probably don't need to spend as much time studying it as a class that you're struggling with.
Yeah.
So you should definitely think about where your weaknesses are, how much time you need to invest and in studying and utilize the Science Learning Center. and like, your friends and stuff, because there were students in class that understood the physics. I mean, I could have asked for help, but then the other thing is like, I kind of didn't want to ask for help. So that's also not a good thing. So, you should ask for help. I mean, the worst thing
Yeah.
somebody could say is no, right? And you're in the place you started. So, yeah. Yeah. So definitely
Yeah.
ask for help. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And then one thing I would like to share, guys, is one thing I've learned over the years is before you start any class, it is quite imperative to find something you like about that class. If from the beginning of the class you're already out of the class, like if you're already out of it, I'm talking about your mindset. Like you've already failed. That's it. So before you even start a class, find something you like about that class. Um, like classes that I really enjoyed, like not that I didn't enjoy any other classes, but like classes that like I really, it was just like, this is it, it's like, so a class like parasitology, a class like, human body and brain, a class like what other class? I don't want to forget the classes, genetics, and then there's one especially with Dr. Mansell. Oh my God,
Mammalian physiology.
mammalian physiology. So
Oh, I took that class. God.
um my God, actually, he prefers the name medical physiology to the class. He doesn't really like how it's called mammalian physiology, but that class and all these classes I've mentioned, like my mindset going was like, this is it. Like I just loved these classes, So and because of that, I excelled in these classes. So that's what I'm gonna tell you guys. Like, if you're going into a class, perhaps you don't really like the class, find a reason to like the class because that will help you to do much better. Because you have a motivation to study and you actually love what you're studying. Right now, I believe people are probably in their midterms right now, or probably after midterms, it's like crisis mode.
Yeah.
Right now, the focus, yeah,
That's
yeah,
really
yeah,
great advice. I think,
yep. Hmm.
had I spoken to you before I took physics, that would have been great
That'd have
advice.
been great.
I went into physics thinking, oh my gosh, I don't understand physics.
Yeah,
It's hard. And that is not like that's not a good way to go in, because
right.
you're going to learn the material, right?
Mhm.
You're going to learn the material, and you have to be open minded about the material,
Yeah,
you know? So
yeah,
going in thinking,
yeah.
I mean, you could say this is hard, but I'm going to learn it and I'm going to do well,
Ooh,
is
come
a
on.
good way to, to go in. I was like, oh my gosh, this is hard. I'm going to fail.
For
Yeah.
mammalian physiology, I remember writing on the first page of my notebook, this class is super hard, but it's going to be fun. Like I
Yeah.
wrote that, like in colors, exclamation point. And it was fun. Like, come on, like it was super hard. Like the things we had to learn and like just his type of questions, Dr. Manso, it was super hard, but like because I loved the class, like I put
Yeah.
the time into it and I excelled. So that problem you had with physics, for me, I had that problem with organic chemistry. So I wish I would have actually applied this during that time, but that's why I'm giving this advice out, guys. So take note. Okay, Lyda, thank you. Let's move on to research. You have an extensive background in that, so talk to us about it. How did you get into research? How did you get an interest to do that, and where are you now with that? Yeah, pretty much.
So as a part of the MARC program, I did research first with Dr. Bomshad and then with Dr. Munsell. So I got to do research for 2 years at Lehman, and I really, really enjoyed it. By the time I left Lehman, I had an interest in diabetes and obesity and understanding metabolic diseases in general. So, as I said, I applied to the NIH for the post-bac program. I was accepted into the lab of a really great physician, Dr. Chitsa. And so I looked at the effect of sleep deprivation on obesity. And that was really great. It was like a clinical study. We had patients coming in. I got to see so much, of like the patient interaction as well as the research side of it, like handling, medical samples, like doing, different neuropsychological testing, just like he exposed us to like so many different aspects of it. So it was really, really fun at the NIH. And I ended up, the appointment was for a year, but I ended up spending like about a year and 4 months, just because the PhD program started in August. So I really, as I said, was interested in metabolic diseases. So I got into Einstein, and the way it works with my PhD program is that you do 3 rotations and then you select your lab. So I did 3 rotations and I ultimately selected the lab that I did my PhD research in with Dr. Maureen Sharon. And I looked at like epigenetic basis for metabolic diseases, kind of like what does the in utero environment have to do with your susceptibility to metabolic diseases. So we looked at high fat diet, and how that causes epigenetic marks in mice, hopefully to extend this to human studies. But we also did some human studies. So using cord blood, we looked at epigenetic markers in babies that were born small for their gestational age, or babies that were born large for gestational age, and compared it to babies that were born normal size, and kind of because whether you're born small or large for gestational age, you're more susceptible to metabolic disease. So as I was doing my PhD, I did a lot of volunteer work. So I volunteered with the New York Academy of Sciences to be an in-house scientist for some middle school students. So I looked at, who's a scientist? What does a scientist look like? And so students typically think of like a Caucasian male looking like Einstein, like hair all crazy and everything. So seeing a Black female, right, was kind of like, whoa. And when I told the students, like, I went to Lehman College, oh, my sister went to Lehman College, so it makes science more, approachable to these students. So I was an in-house scientist for New York Academy of Sciences.
Nice.
I also did volunteer with rapid HIV testing, lots of different things. My apologies. My dog wants to share about some of my background. He wants to help. He thinks I'm forgetting something. My apologies. Right? Okay. So, so as I did a lot of these things, and even at church, like people would be like, I'm thinking of going back to college. Like, what do I do? I realized that I really liked that part better than being at the bench. I'm not saying that I won't go back to the bench, but when I was thinking about what I wanted to do after my PhD, I definitely saw myself like in a more advisory role, in a more teaching role. So I reached out to Dr. Henning, who I kept in touch with. And this is why I'm saying, everyone, like, that advisor that you spoke to, like that instructor you spoke to during your college years, they may be the one to open a door for you. So don't don't burn that bridge, right? Keep in touch, let them know what you're doing, all of that stuff. And, it's kind of like full circle, because I took his Saturday bio class, right? And I kind of said, I think I want to get into teaching. What do I do? And he's like, oh, Dr. Cheng is looking for, adjunct instructors for the labs for bio. Reach out to him, let him know you're interested. So I did. And, I'm teaching, and I'm teaching Saturday bio class. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, this is so cool. Like, I took this class, now I'm teaching it, So it felt really, really good. And as I was at Lehman, even before that, once I graduated, or like a little bit before I graduated, because I kind of defended in January, but then I had all of that time, before the semester started to like teach. Dr. Parkinson in the Science Learning Center, I kept in touch with him too. And I was kind of like, okay, I'm kind of trying to get into teaching. I'm trying to get something at Lehman. do you know about anything? And he's like, come by, you could tutor in the Science Learning Center until you find something. So, that was really good. So I was employed, you know, by people at Lehman who I kind of kept in touch with and kind of said, hey, this is where I'm at. And then once a position opened up for the Pathways to Student STEM Success Advisor, I think Dr. Althea Ford, who is in charge of like all of the academic advising, she's the director for all of the tutoring. I have to look up her exact role. She kind of reached out to me and said, this would be like, really good for you. Like, look into it. And the rest is history.
The rest is history. Right.
And this is where I met before and
hey.
all of that awesome
stuff. Okay. So like, what advice do you have for that student out there wanting to go into research to be successful in it?
So I would say the thing with me is that I wasn't aware of what was out there. And so, research was not something that I'd considered before going into it, and so I wanted to get as broad of an experience as possible. So I did, I did research with Dr. Baumschott and then with Dr. Munsell. So I would say if you've never done research before, I would go to the website of whichever department you're in and read up on the research that, the different instructors do. And then approach them and ask if it's okay for you to do research in their lab. A lot of departments have research as a class. You could get credit for it. So I took research, even though I was doing research as a part of the MARC program, I was also gaining credit for it. So with bio, it's called 489, for chemistry also. So it's a 1 credit class. After you've done 489, you could do it for 3 credits and you could get honors, right? Mm-hmm. So you're doing research with an instructor. So you could do several different kinds of research because the different experimental techniques that you learn, will be useful later on, right? So just reach wide because you may be interested in one topic, and I was interested in autism, but I got diabetes experience. And so I was like, wait, this is really cool. Like, this is like very important for the neighborhood I'm living in, for even my own family. And so like, that's kind of where I went. So yeah, you don't know what's out there until you get the experience.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. So, now let's talk about, now you are like a senior pre-health, advisor, like, so talk to us about that. And also throughout your advising career, what are some mistakes that you've seen students make a lot? Especially pre-meds. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, one of the great mistakes that I see students make is not going to an advisor, right? So I tell students that, listen, my job is to make sure that you're successful, right? And all of the advisors I know, like they take joy in like helping their students. I get excited when you're successful. Your success is my success. So I say like reach out to an advisor early, talk to an advisor about like course choices, right? Course sequencing. That's very important. I see students taking courses that they don't need, right? That won't count towards requirements because they were like, well, I saw it on DegreeWorks that it said this. Yeah, but you're going to get that requirement through something else. So speak to an advisor early. For pre-health students, I would say speak to Dr. Calvin early, right? He's going to be the one that will tell you about, what volunteer experience you need, how many shadowing hours you need. If you're looking on a school's website and it says, oh, you need 200 hours or 100 hours, that may be like a bare minimum requirement, right? You should go above and beyond, right? So I'd say meet with Dr. Calvin early, talk about like requirements, kind of discover like what are you missing to make you that fully rounded student. And I fully understand. I mean, I'm a first generation to college student. Dr. Calvin is also. And so are a lot of people and a lot of our students. Like, you've never had someone in your family go through this path, so obviously you do not know the steps, and we don't expect you to know the steps, right? And that's why we're here to assist you with all of this, right? So I think a lot of mistakes that students make is to not seek help, to figure that they could kind of figure it out on their own. With pre-med students, I think a lot of times, like, the MCAT is like a big barrier to getting into medical school. And I think that students don't, it's like maybe the first huge exam that a lot of students take. And so they don't adequately prepare for it because they're not used to like an exam that's testing so many things, and it's like requires stamina and all of that. And so, not like doing a lot of practice exams, not investing the time, not, it's really expensive, not like using resources, thinking this is just something that you could just like, like just not putting the minimum, like you don't want to put the minimum in.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is like not understanding the timeline of when stuff needs to get in, right? So it's pretty much, when do you need to request committee letters? When do you need to start studying? When do you need to register? Like, the MCAT is not something you could register for the day before, the month before even you want to take the test, right? The dates fill up. The registration opens like in October for the following year, from January to July. You want to make sure you're in. Right. So you want to make sure that you're registering, you're doing all the right things. So, kind of getting a better sense of the timeline. And you'd get that by speaking to like Dr. Calvin or, myself or someone like that who's knowledgeable about it.
Yeah. Thank you. Wow. Wow. This conversation has been great. Thank you, Lydia. I think people probably want part 2 of this. But yeah, it's been great. Guys, if this has been helpful, remember to hit a like button and to subscribe if you haven't done so already. Join me to say a big thank you to Dr. Lyda Williams. Lyda, thank you so much. And guys, until we meet again, it's bye for now.